Hi, my name is Michael Lee of the Source Code Group, and today I'm going to be talking about um, the next design concepts around handling cascading settings, and most importantly, around the context of merge request approvals and essentially branch rules. So just a recap of things, at the moment we can define merge request approvals at the project level through merge request approvals and eventually branch rules. At the security policy level, we can define different approvers over here. So you can define approvals based on different conditions of scans. And what we're talking about introducing soon is the ability to introduce merge request approval rules at the group level and having that cascade down to project level. So the cascading rules, will it apply only from the group root level down to the projects, or should we have group level rules and subgroup level rules and kind of handle a cascading rule around that? I think to keep it simple at this time, we should only do the root group, and then from there build out how that experience works. And if we need to explore subgroups in the future, that's something that we can look into. But I think in reading other issues around this space, then that was kind of like the direction of handling it at the root group from potentially a performance issue. But things may have changed, so please let me know if I should change my thinking here. So I'm going to move ahead, assuming just attacking this at a group level. So at the moment, this is our group level rules around repository settings. What we can introduce at the group level is branch rules. So when I say branch rules, this encompasses branch protections and merge request approvals. So all those different kind of rules can be applied in one area. So the other thing that we need to introduce to make this work is the ability to provide exceptions. Exceptions are really necessary here because what we don't want to do is lock out projects because they increase the number of approvers across the whole spectrum of projects in a group, and which could be both a hassle for the project maintainer, plus also the approver who has to approve projects that they really don't care for or don't need to look into. So we can look at providing exceptions so that these rules apply to everything but these projects. So in this case, there's 150 projects. An exception here is here. I think we can start like this and add individual projects as exceptions. If that gets really bad, the other approach that we could look into is excluding by subgroups. So there could be a team that doesn't need to follow the compliance rules at the group level closely. So in that case, we can add a subgroup as an exception. So then when we do the logic checks, we would include those subgroups. So in this scenario, we can see that, oh, okay, there's 120 of these projects being applied, except for this. So it gives you visibility of where these rules are applied and not applied. One thing that you've probably seen so far is the design of the branch rules. At the moment in production, it looks something like this, but there's a movement within settings right now to use the card layout. So something like that could look like something like this. And at the project level, we would get these branch rules inherited that we defined at the group level. So in this scenario here, these first two are rules that have been defined at the project level. And then this one over here is defined from the group. And not only defined, it's inherited. So when we do the rule calculation, we're looking at all three rules, not just these two that's defined at the project level currently. And then you can't really edit them here, but you can view them. And if you have permissions to edit the group level rules, yeah, that could change as well. So this way it gives you a read-only view of the rule itself. So I think that's valuable for a repository manager kind of looking in here, checking the rules and seeing what may conflict in their rules. So what will happen to project settings that already exist? This one I'm open to engineering input. Will group settings override project settings, or will we just use group settings instead of project level settings? So project level settings don't get erased, but they would still live there in the database. But if the flag is on that the group level rules are applied, we would just read the group levels instead. I think that might be beneficial in the scenario where we applied this group level rule across the whole entire group, but there's projects there that had settings set up and they get added to the exception list, and that should revert them back to their previous settings without extra additional work. And I think that's why I would opt for more to use instead of project level settings. So keeping the project level settings there unless they explicitly override them themselves. But open to engineering input there. So the other part that we need to look into is the rules and how they manifest themselves, especially with merge request approvals if there are matching rules. So the idea of moving to the card can allow us to present information with some structure. So this is an example of how approval rules with inherited rules at the group level, policy, and project level. If you have code owners approvals, if you click it open, you can see what that resolves to. This is something that you only see currently inside of merge requests. But bringing it into the world of settings can help that person who's maintaining the repository understand the scope of the changes that and the scope of the approvals that are in there. This can get really long for a big project, so maybe rendering this out might not be the right thing, and perhaps just linking to the code owners and the relevant code owners files is the better approach here. And speaking around inheriting, we can have the merge request rules being inherited from the group levels. At the project level, it would look something like this. Security policies could be injected into certain branch names scenarios. So let's say any feature branch that has any security violations, and we would analyze any policies against the project and then display that it's to required. After reviewing this with Camilla, she's actually said that this is not very useful for people. DAS to required. And she put me on to the idea that we already have summaries for security policies. And this is an example of one where we have like default denied rules is the title of the policy. And this is one of the more complex one, and it has a summary where it says it requires 2 approvals when this condition happens and when this condition happens. So if we apply that to the world of merge request approvals, what that might look like over here is that we have our inherited security policy with its name to required. And if you click on show summary, we would display the same summary that's there for a security summary. And as a maintainer of a repository, you can see not only the rules that you have set up for the at the project level, but you can also see what other checks may come in from both the group and the security policy. So I think this one view to manage things can give you more control of what's being applied. So yes, so to recap things, for merge request approval settings, merge request approval rules at the group level, you can think about moving ahead with that with the branch rules approach. But the most important thing that we need to ensure that we do is to allow for exceptions. We need both of these things to happen so that we don't upset existing projects, and it provides a way for overriding. For projects that already have project settings, we would use these rules instead of those settings. And if there's a scenario where those projects don't need to follow these group level rules, we can add them to the exception list, and it would revert back to the previous project level settings that were there. I hope this clarifies things a little bit, and I look forward to some of your feedback. Thank you.